I assume you're interested in this question. It has been my pleasure since 1989 to watch lots and lots of your peers, people who will soon be your bosses, but they were my students then, go down to Wall Street and join some of the top management consulting firms and become brand managers. And it's been fascinating to watch which of those do quite well and which of those stumble and whose careers blossom. And I do think there are some general principles. Who's going to see this video? Fine. Then I can loosen up a little bit, right? If we can talk about Jick in a box, I can do a couple of my favorite demonstrations. Fine. I spent 6 years behind a one-way mirror at the University of Illinois as I got my PhD doing experiments on people. I'm an experimental social psychologist by training. I don't think people are that complicated. I think there are basic principles that govern their behavior. I think there are laws that can be understood. And I'm violating one of those laws right now, right? And what kills me is half of you have seen this many times, but it always works. And that's why it's worth pointing out. The law of personal space is one that most of you know. But what's important to realize is, even though she's aware of it, and we can name it, it doesn't make it go away. And if I were to spend the rest of my 14 minutes standing here, she would find an excuse to pretend her cell phone went off and step out. So Dan's point about being aware of these things and controlling them really does matter. Now, here's what I'd like to share with you. If you go to any large organization, you're going to get a job at the entry level, and these are just meant to be individuals. So you go down to Goldman Sachs and you get a job working on the foreign exchange trading desk, or the fixed income trading desk, or you're one of the traders on the foreign exchange desk or something. And or maybe it's nurses at the entry level in an organization, and you're a nurse in the cardiac care unit or the emergency room or the obstetrics ward. You're a member of a unit at the entry level, and you guys are all going to get jobs, because the good news is 95% of you are going to be employed in the field of your choice within 6 months of graduation. That's a stable finding. You're going to be fine. So you're going to get an entry-level job because you have a great MBA and your dad knows somebody at the company or whatever. And so you're going to get in the door, and you're going to be fine. And you're going to work hard, and you're very smart. But eventually, one of these people has to get promoted to manage the other folks. One of these bond traders has to get promoted to manage the other bond traders after a few years. Which one's it going to be? Well, enormous thought has gone into this, and I'm very interested. Which of these characters is going to get promoted to manage the others after a few years? Well, it's an interesting question. Because I live in the real world, I'm not going to give you the classroom answer that it's the one with the best leadership skills or whatever. It's the one that delivers the highest level of performance. And at the entry level for most of you, first couple of years out, it's going to be a meritocratic opportunity for you. You're going to work hard, you're going to be very smart, your performance will be reasonably tangible, and you're going to get ahead. Because you're going to be able to demonstrate the kind of value-added skills that Columbia MBAs are known for. So you're going to get to the next level. And most of you will get that first promotion. Good for you. But now we have a problem. Because now you're doing something up here, which is not staying up all night, squeezing the spreadsheet harder. It's getting other people to stay up all night and squeeze the spreadsheet harder. It's delivering performance to other people. But you're going to basically know how to do that because you're pretty smart. And you're going to reflect on what made you good at the entry level, whether it was delivering patient care or brand management or bond trading. And you're going to muddle through at the next level because you're going to reflect on how to do that. You're going to set expectations. You're going to hold people accountable. And you'll be able to deliver performance to other people. But now the question is, which of these people is going to get promoted to the next level? And that's an interesting question, because you're now doing something that you really haven't been formally trained for, and there's no real reason to believe you're going to be any good at it. So what separates them? That's an interesting question. Now, which of these people is going to get to the next level? Well, because I live in the real world, let's be very candid about it. One of them is just going to take themselves out of consideration because they tell racist jokes, they have a drug or an alcohol problem, or they're just totally incapable. So that helps with your competition somewhat, because that's the real world. But some of you will do what was called muddling through. You will reflect on what made you effective here, you'll pick up some additional skills, you'll continue to learn and grow, and you'll get up to the next level. But now you're doing something that is a very different skill. It's a leadership skill. You've delegated the technical skills that you are so good at now, the things that allow you to add value, the things that determine your self-worth and identity. Those you've delegated long ago, and if you keep doing that, you'll be unproductive. You have to do a new kind of thing. It's a leadership skill. And some of you are not going to be very good at it. You're not going to be bad enough to fire, but you're not going to be good enough to get to the next level. You know what that's called? There's a name for it. It's called the Peter Principle. It's so well understood, there's a name for it, right? And because you can name it, you can recognize it, right? This is going to happen to most of you. And the only way out of that is to recognize it and anticipate it. Now, we're well aware of this one. It's not a surprise, but let me help you with some ways to get out of it. If you look at any measure of organizational success, now we use money because it's easy to measure. Researchers use money as a measure of success because it's tangible and measurable. But the fact is, if you use any measure of organizational success on the y-axis, number of people that report to you, your title in the organization, revenue you generate, whatever it is you want to define as success, and we plot that against the IQ, what do you think the graph looks like? Now, because you're MBAs, you want to believe it's a steadily increasing thing because you feel you're up here and you're looking forward to making a lot of money. But we know that it isn't really that way. Let me show you some data. It's discouraging, isn't it? Because the very thing that sets you apart, which is how smart you are, isn't really going to help very much. A little bit, but not enough. There's another thing that you know matters. It matters more. Think of it this way. Look around the room. If you could attach a tax of 10% of the lifetime earnings of anybody in this room, or of anybody that you've met in your Columbia MBA classes, he's actually looking around the room. Who would it be? Would it be the super brainiest, smartest person? You guys by now know and have a sense of which of you are really going to make it, right? And is it the person with the most raw intelligence? Probably not. You guys have come to realize there's this other thing. And for lack of a better word, there is some set of qualities that separates people who continue to rise and grow in their careers and make it to the C-suite. And they're not always the smartest people in the room, right? Just look at the United States Senate. They're not always the smartest, right? There's another set of skills, right? Now, for lack of a better term, we call it emotional intelligence to separate it from intelligence. But over the years, it has been refined and sharpened, and there's a couple of components. Dan mentioned one, which is emotional self-regulation, the ability to identify and be aware of your self-limiting factors. It's extremely important, the ability to manage and regulate those matters. Now, with my little bit of time left, I'll make a very quick point. For 40 years, our predecessors in this field spent enormous effort trying to understand what is the magic quality that makes people great leaders. Apparently, more books have been written on leadership than any other single topic, by some measures. Anybody know what it is? There is one variable that consistently correlates with leadership effectiveness. Does anybody know what it is? It's shoe size. Believe it or not, there is a weak but persistent correlation between shoe size and leadership. If you go into the Army and you look at all the people that make lieutenant, the slightly taller ones tend to, right? It's a weak but persistent one. And it is true that taller people, but it's not that big of a factor. The reason I'm emphasizing that one in such a silly way is to shortcut the conversation, make the quick point. It's not how smart you are. And it's not who your father was, and it's not your gender, and it's not your technical expertise, and it's not any other single measurable skill. And height's not one you can really work on. There is this thing called emotional intelligence, though, and that's what I'm trying to bring up here. The emerging body of research has continued to show that across a wide variety of public sector, private sector organizations, government organizations, not-for-profit, etc., it matters, it's measurable, and it is associated with compensation. Now, again, I'm not trying to say compensation is the be-all and end-all. It's just a proxy variable for success because it's easy to measure. It matters, and it's teachable. It's a set of behaviors. And with my 3 minutes left, I'd like to teach you how to do it, at least a component of it. This magical thing that has a statistical correlation, and you know that this means we're accounting for significant variation in overall performance. That matters. Okay, here we go. You think you do this? Do you think you do that? Can you give me an example where you do it?
Anytime you're looking for a reason for, so like the stock's gone up, and you're like, oh, it's because this, they've got this big.
Fine. Frankly, your first 5 words were enough. Anytime you're looking for a reason. That was the rest was just an example, right? But I think, do you think you do this? I think I do it all the time. I'm acutely aware of it. I bet you do this all the time. You ever watch a political debate? It was a complete waste of time, right? Because you show up with certain feelings about the candidate, and you watch the debate. And when they say something you like, you say, see, I really like that person. And when they say something that you don't like, you dismiss it. Or you say, well, I would have, and so, right? It's just the way it is. Very few of us actually change our opinions watching a political debate. Now, let me make a quick example, my favorite one. Anybody here from Japan? Anybody speak Japanese? You go to the hospital in Tokyo. You got a sharp stabbing pain in your side. The doctor diagnoses you with ikayo. You know what ikayo is? Can you translate that in English for me? My Japanese is better than his English. Right? And I only know one word. That's right. It means ulcer, stomach ulcer, a sharp stabbing pain in your side. Now in Tokyo, the doctor would give you some advice. He'd say, you have an ikayo, an ulcer. You have to change something about your life, right? And what advice would he give you? What would you have to change about your life? Your way of living. Okay? You might have to reduce your stress level, right? Fine. And how would you reduce your stress level? It's hard. Meditation, exercise, maybe quit your job. Is there something else about your lifestyle you would have to change if you have an ulcer? Work less. That's always good advice. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Where'd you grow up?
South Africa.
In South Africa, if you have an ulcer, the doctor would give you some advice. You have to make some changes in your life, right?
Yeah.
And what would you have to change?
Change your diet.
And what about your diet would you have to change?
Eat less chili, drink less food.
Eat less chilies. Fine. And less booze. Great. Where'd you grow up? In Atlanta, if you have an ulcer, the doctor would say you got to make some changes. What would you have to change about your diet? Stop eating so much fat. Fantastic. Now, doctors in each of our countries have been given this advice for 70 years, and this advice is bullshit. Ulcers have very little to do with stress and diet. Does anybody here know what causes ulcers? Somebody with some credibility, please. Tell them. It's a bacteria. Now, you don't have to trust me, but you should certainly trust this person, right? The bacteria is actually called Helicobacter pylori. It's clearly treatable with an antibiotic. It has very little to do with stress and diet. But the confirmation bias is so powerful that even doctors that have access to the gold standard of scientific truth, the randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, couldn't see it. Because once they formed the hypothesis that his ikayo was formed by stress and diet, when he comes back and says, Doc, I feel great, the doctor says, see, I'm a good doctor. That'll be 100 euros, please. And when he comes back 6 months later and says, I still really don't feel so good, it still hurts, does the doctor say, I really need to re-examine all my causal theories of stress and ulcer formation? What does the doctor say? You've been cheating on that diet, haven't you? Right? So here's my point with 1 minute left. You guys are talented, smart, hardworking, ambitious people. But most of you are coasting on a set of interpersonal skills that you developed in about 3rd grade when you were the smartest person in the room, and you have been differentially rewarded for that all your lives. And you now mistakenly believe that that's the way forward. And when you bring your interpersonal coping skills to the difficult conversations that Dan described, when you need to have good fights, when you need to inspire and motivate and communicate and delegate and all the soft stuff, you rely on those interpersonal coping skills you developed in about 3rd grade. And when they work, you use the confirmation bias and say, see, I'm really good at this. And when they don't work, you say, that person's an asshole. So I have to step off now, but my warning to you is, success is a set of behaviors. It's things you can learn how to do. You can observe the people that you admire, that impress you, and you can learn what they do that makes them so effective. And you can do that too. And it starts by opening your eyes and recognizing what's holding you back. So thank you very much for your attention, and good luck.